This is the Khmer Times News. My name is Paolo Bonini, and these are your headlines. A huge scam sees thousands of people lose millions of dollars. A man high on drugs injures an incredible 31 people in a single traffic accident. And a mad axe murderer is at long last apprehended. But firstly, our headline story. Investors this week have protested in their hundreds at a huge scam that has destroyed thousands of people's lives and has cost them millions of dollars. A spokesman for the Siem Reap court has said the court is now working on numerous cases against a Mrs. Channa, the owner of Brilliant City World, who it is said has robbed over 6,000 innocent investors. They all had invested in Brilliant City World with sums from $1,000 up to $200,000. The scam itself was simple. It was based on land sale projects within Siem Reap, and the investors were offered monthly interest payments at alarmingly good rates. Now, oddly, I have seen these investment opportunities advertised on Facebook. Where else? With the promise of over 15% per month interest guaranteed. As an investor myself, I actually drove to one of these housing complexes to investigate these remarkable claims. I did it out of my own curiosity, as it was not far from my house. But if it in fact was one of the land deals organised by this particular woman in this story, I could not say. But what I did discover was a very, very shaky investment opportunity. On arriving at the site, I spoke with a lady who said she was the owner of this very nice-looking housing project. I looked around and I made noises of interest. But when I asked her how did she guarantee the huge interest she was advertising, she said it would come from rentals, which was more than bizarre, as the entire place was devoid of any tenants. When I pushed on and asked, what if the apartment I bought was not rented out? Where would the money come from? Was there an insurance policy in place? She replied, do not worry, you get a piece of paper saying it's guaranteed. I explained I could give her a piece of paper saying I lived on the moon, but that does not mean I am actually a lunar resident. At which point her sales pitch, rather unsurprisingly, abruptly ended. And it seems that the people who have now lost millions did not take the final step that I did, and that was to do due diligence and see how viable an investment actually is. And Cambodians are sometimes inexperienced investors who are easily blinded by a quick and easy money-making scheme. But in fact, it is the old adage that needs to be obeyed. If it sounds too good to be true, that is because it is. And in this case, what this woman was offering was no more than a Ponzi scheme, one that has ruined thousands of people's lives. On this week's Crime Desk, a mad axe murderer is caught, and accidents involving military vehicles that are being driven by those who should not be behind the wheel. Now here is a story from last week. I almost covered it, but did not have time. It is yet another hit-and-run incident, but this time it has a twist. You see, there was a car accident in Sihanoukville where a Chinese motorist fled the scene of the accident. But the police already had all his details, including photos and the driver's identity. A wanted notice was put out for the immediate arrest of a Mr. Fang, the Chinese driver who had fled the scene. Now, the reason that I found this story interesting is what was on Mr. Fang's car, for he had military number plates, when obviously he had nothing to do with the military. But at that time, this was not noted in the news story. Well, now there has been some very rewarding updates, as Mr. Fang has been arrested and is to be tried. But more interesting is this headline that then appeared after his arrest. It read, "The military is to take action on illegal use of RCAF licensed vehicles." So it seems I was not the only one to notice Mr. Fang's car jewellery he had no right to display. In the news story, the ministry has said there is a number of issues that affect the public, and these include traffic accidents caused by drivers with RCAF plates, who are considered by the public to be arrogant drivers. But interestingly, the spokesman and Secretary of State for the Ministry of Defence said, "Cases involving civilians or foreigners driving RCAF registered vehicles is due to the leasing of these vehicles by unidentified individuals." What he said was, "Most of the time, foreigners rent the car from someone and we cannot identify the people involved in this illegal activity. And both the person who rents the car and the renter must now face legal action," which is refreshing to know, as many of the public do perceive the drivers with these special plates as sometimes being a little arrogant in their style of driving, and would like to see these rogue drivers dealt with accordingly. But hold on there. You remember the last story of Mr. Fang and his special number plates? Was it indeed his case that caused this new crackdown on military plates? As another story has now emerged, and it is so much worse. It is of another foreign man who has now been charged for injuring 31 people in a single accident. Yes, 31. He was also driving a military license plated car. Just to make it worse, he was also high on drugs when he injured the 31, for he drove his car with the RCAF license plates into a trailer in Kandal province. The 38-year-old Vietnamese man has now been charged with reckless driving, negligence, causing grievous bodily harm, as well as driving under the influence of drugs, and, of course, using a vehicle with military plates. Wow. You've got to admit, he really stacked up those charges. The police stated that the Vietnamese man drove a car into a vehicle transporting workers, causing the 31 people to be injured. 4 of them were so seriously injured they were rushed to hospital in an ambulance. It is an incredible case that so many were injured, but let us hope his sentence reflects the huge amount of harm that this one man has caused. Okay, let us, for the first time ever on Crime Desk, make it a clean sweep, with all of our featured criminals being arrested. Mr. Fang was nicked not for his imaginative taste in shirts and shorts, but leaving the scene of an accident. Our junky Vietnamese chum put 4 in hospital and injured another 27. And our final criminal captured is this guy. But his story is so much darker than the others, as this guy looks kind of innocent, the sort that would not hurt anyone, when in fact he has now been detained after a long and very difficult manhunt to bring him to justice. As of yet, his name has not been released to us, but the details of his horrific crime have been. And again, it is a crime that could dwell in a Victorian novel, for this guy had an argument with a 62-year-old farmer and his aged wife. They were, in fact, his brother and sister-in-law. The row got more and more heated, and the accused returned to his home seething with anger, a rage that he simply could not contain. So he went to his woodshed and he picked up an axe. He then returned to the farmer's house, and there he brutally hacked his aging relatives to death. The scene was quite simply horrific, and after his act of unimaginable horror had ended, the man fled. He was on the run for many weeks, but now has been detained by the Bureau of Serious Crimes, and the case file of this axe murderer has been sent to the provincial court for further proceedings. We are closing this week with news that sadly another highly endangered Irrawaddy dolphin calf has been found dead in Karachi province. Now, this is a real shame, as it was going all so well. For months and months and months last year, I covered this story, reporting on death after death after death of this rare and beautiful creature that kept on dying in fishing nets. At one point, it all seemed so very hopeless, as the dolphin population was being destroyed by fishermen that were not just irresponsible, but were fishing illegally within the protected dolphin sanctuary. But then, sweeping changes were brought in to protect this species, a species that is literally teetering on the very edge of extinction. And how close to extinction are they? Well, the Fisheries Administration say there could be as few as 90. Yes, just 90 of them left. But it gets worse, as the WWF says it's lower. It's only 85 dolphins now alive. So when this 1 meter long baby dolphin drowned in a fishing net, it was a very serious blow to the dwindling population. The WWF Cambodia director said, despite law enforcement efforts by government agencies, the fact remains that illegal fishing is also still on the rise, a serious challenge to the survival of the Irrawaddy dolphins. And it's worse than you may think, as the fishermen are using high-tech methods, including electric fish shocking gear, to kill off the fish with electricity. But in doing so, they are also killing dolphins. But saying all this, there is a ray of hope. Just as I'm going to press, another story has emerged that a new baby dolphin has been spotted in the waters. So at least this one time, this story does end with a slight glimmer of hope. It's time to have a look ahead and see what the weather has in store for us next week. Okay, here we go with the weather. I did rather well this week, don't you know? I went rather well. Sometimes look out for the colour in this show, and then you'll see as to how difficult it is. It drops in and out. Right, okay, that's the padding over with. I've found the weather report. Okay, humidity up in about the 50% mark. Temperature low 30s, late 20s, but there is cloud across the board. And let me spell that out to you in just a single word that starts with an H. It's humidity. This has been the Khmer Times News. Please do subscribe and comment and stay up to date with all the breaking news by following us on both Facebook and Telegram. This has been Paolo Bonini, and that was the week that was. I'll see you next weekend for your weekly Roundup.